Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, March 13th through Sunday, March 19th, 2023. This week we're very much in the midst of Pisces season. Sun, of course, is in Pisces and Mercury is as well. I would actually argue that we are going to experience peak Pisces season this week, and that's mainly because we have a triple conjunction between Sun, Mercury, and Neptune this week. So not only are we, in the middle of Pisces season, but we'll also have this kind of unique triple conjunction. And so basically this means that we're very much in this kind of void or this fog. We're in this sort of like amorphous abyss of sorts. Void, I guess you could say. Nothing really makes sense when you have this much Piscean energy. It's almost like we're kind of half asleep and half awake at the same time. We're sort of in a dream state. It's almost like the laws of physics are temporarily suspended, and we don't really realize the full extent of it until the dream is over and we wake up when these planets ingress into Aries. I don't know if any of that even makes sense right now, but besides that, there's actually a lot going on this week, so let's get right into it here. So let's see, where do we even start here? You can see in the chart that all the planets are beginning to kind of cluster together. We've got an Aries stellium, we've got technically a Pisces stellium with Neptune, Sun, Mercury, and now Saturn in Pisces. But just speaking in more general terms, just look at this chart here. You can see a whole bunch of planets just lining up. Uranus North Node is not a planet, but it's in the lineup. We got Venus, Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune, Sun, Mercury, and Saturn are all lined up from Pisces to Aries to the beginning of Taurus. So really, all the planets are in one part of the zodiac except for, let's say, Mars, Pluto, and the moon. But the moon is on its way. Once the moon gets over to this corner, moon will be participating in this lineup as well. That'll just leave Mars and Pluto not in this like 2.5 sign range. This does have some pretty interesting implications, I think, especially because of the signs that this cluster is falling in. Pisces and Aries. Whenever you have a lot of Pisces and Aries energy together, it becomes extremely chaotic. Aries is the first sign, it's all about initiation, very fiery. Pisces is the last sign, it's all about endings and speculations and going within. So mixing both of those is kind of like hitting the gas and the brake at the same time. It can become very dysfunctional, very chaotic. There can be a lot of accidents. You're also mixing Aries, which is ruled by Mars. It's about warfare and being a little bit dramatic, impulsive, spontaneous, very action oriented. Mixing that with Pisces, which is all about delusion and not really seeing clearly. Of course, you can get a lot of accidents and some, mishaps or, just things really spiraling out of control very rapidly from the combination of those energies. On the other hand, both Aries and Pisces, because they have to do with the beginning and end of the entire zodiac, the entire cycle, they both are very raw energies. They're both very soulful, very passionate, very heartfelt. So combining these can give you kind of two sides of the same coin in a way. It can be kind of poetic. It can allow you to feel very deeply and become very passionate. So you could take advantage of that too. Of course, all of that depends on your own natal astrology and how that interacts with the current transits. Anyway, other things going on this week. We do have 2 planetary ingresses. Venus will be leaving Aries and entering Taurus, where she is much more at home. Mercury will be leaving Pisces and entering Aries, where he is not necessarily at home, but Mercury really thrives in Aries. Mercury's the mental energy. We love newness. We love starting things. It's very exciting for the mind. So, of course, Mercury kind of thrives in Aries, really. Mercury is in a very disadvantaged state in Pisces. So we're still, for most of this week, we're still experiencing this kind of discombobulation, confusion, not being able to really get our facts straight or view things objectively. But like I said, this will become all the more clear once Mercury leaves Pisces and enters Aries at the end of this week. Then we can see more clearly and we'll look back and go, wait, what just happened? What was the last 2 weeks? One more thing I wanted to mention that too. It's only a little bit over 2 weeks that Mercury is in Pisces this year. It was only in the forecast I did before my last one that Mercury left Aquarius and entered Pisces. And now, only 2 forecasts later, it's already entering Aries. So I just wanted to comment on that, how Mercury's speed is so... I just forgot the word, but Mercury's speed changes so dramatically. Right now, Mercury's traveling very quickly, so it will speed right on out of Pisces and go into Aries, where things are much more active in a linear, direct way. So depending, of course, on your own astrology, I think most of us can look forward to Mercury leaving Pisces and entering Aries. On the other hand, though, there is, of course, something to learn from each and every transit. I've said in the past that with planets in detriment, such as Venus in Aries and Mercury in Pisces, like we're still experiencing for part of the week, there is an opportunity to look outside the box, to be open to experiences and opportunities that you may otherwise not be open to or may not see. So that is one perk of these kind of detriment placements. But generally speaking, they are kind of difficult or uncomfortable. Other than that, this week we do have a third quarter moon in Sagittarius, so that will kind of rile us up a little bit. This is a very philosophical quarter moon, so it's kind of it's been called a crisis of consciousness. Really, any third quarter moon would fit that kind of description, but especially in Sagittarius, which is all about sort of crises in consciousness and philosophy and things of that nature. So we'll talk about that as well. On a more mundane note, let's check in with what the moon is doing. So the moon this week will be, let me see here, the moon will be waning. So we had that full moon last week in Virgo. So the moon is still losing light, kind of coming off of that high. This week it will be waning from Scorpio to Pisces. It will barely reach at the end of the week. And this is really a kind of generally difficult part of the neighborhood, a neck of the woods for moon to travel through. We start out with moon in fall in Scorpio. Moon is kind of out of place in Sagittarius. Moon represents home and family, and then being in Sagittarius, which has to do with adventure and exploration and travel, there's kind of a mismatch there. Moon is then in detriment in Capricorn, and it's almost equally kind of out of place in Aquarius, which is also Saturn's turf. So it won't be till the very end of the week when Moon enters Pisces and starts to kind of wind down for what will eventually be a new moon, that I would say the moon is actually more, I don't want to say at home because it's not in domicile, but it will be in a sign that's more kind of receptive to its nature. So in other words, we may be a little bit emotionally unsettled for most of this week. There's something kind of off kilter, or plus we have to take into account these detriment energies too, with at least 2 of the inner planets in their signs of detriment. We're kind of just feeling off kilter. We're feeling like we're not our normal selves this week, I think. Part of that too is the heavy Pisces energy. We are detached from ourselves in a way. I think that's something that's very interesting about Pisces, is that on the one hand, it's so connected to everything. It's so, raw and emotional. But on the other hand, Pisces can also be extremely detached and not really connected to anything at the same time. It's everything and nothing at the same time. So I think each of us in our own way is experiencing a little bit of that. Again, especially this week. This is kind of the peak of that dreamy kind of energy we get with Pisces season. Okay, so let's start out the forecast with Monday, March 13th. So pretty early in the day, Eastern Standard Time, Moon will actually leave Scorpio and enter Sagittarius. This is, Moon is no longer in fall like it was in Scorpio, so that would typically be a good sign. But you have to remember the aspect that the Moon is making with the Sun. So Moon in Sagittarius by sign squares Sun in Pisces, so this means that we're already gearing up for the third quarter moon. So we may feel a little bit restless, a little bit rowdy. This is also strengthened because the moon is in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. There's this kind of like belligerent energy that comes with moon in Sagittarius, I think. So we may just feel a little bit more agitated, more energetic, more stressed, more anxious, but also more motivated to take action, to initiate, to make change. Quarter moons in general, I know we're not at the quarter moon yet on Monday, but like I said, we're gearing up for it. So I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. We're already starting to feel that energy. So quarter moons are times of initiation, but this is a third quarter moon we're going up to, and these are a little bit less physical in nature than first quarter moons. This means that it's more of an initiation that has to do with the mind or the subconscious. So maybe starting something new in terms of the way we're thinking or the way we're mentally, cognitively approaching something like that. But there's this kind of like mental, emotional, spiritual, what's the word, like disruption or this kind of change that's sparking the need to take action or make something new, do something new. I think a lot of the time there has to be some kind of discomfort or some kind of problem in order to spark creativity, basically. If everything was just perky and fine and dandy, then there would be no need to change the status quo. So there would be no need to be innovative or, to make any kind of change, if that makes sense. So this may be uncomfortable, but it could be the start to something new and exciting. Okay, going forward to Tuesday, March 14th, this is where we get that exact third quarter moon aspect. So this third quarter moon will be at 24 degrees Sagittarius. It will occur in the latter half of the day, Eastern Standard Time, and the moon will be squaring the sun, which will be at 24 degrees Pisces. So yeah, we already covered some of the basics with, what is a third quarter moon and what does this particular one look like? What does it mean for us? It's a crisis in consciousness. Yes, it may be a time to physically start something, do something new, take action, but a lot of it is mental. It's very psychological. This is especially true because of the signs that the sun and the moon are in. The sun is in Pisces, moon is in Sagittarius. Both of these are ruled by Jupiter, which has everything to do with philosophy, higher thinking, obtaining higher knowledge, going to the church or the university or wherever you go for your higher knowledge, wherever you go to ponder, how the world works and things of that nature. I'm not saying we're all going to be rushing to those places on this day, but we may be more we may have more like intellectual or spiritual kind of quandaries that we are pondering over on this day, if that makes sense. Also, there may be more events triggering this kind of thing. More of like a schism that we're experiencing on an internal level. And again, as always, look to where 24 degrees Sagittarius in this case falls in your chart to get more information on that, because that's where you can expect some kind of major change. So for example, if your moon is at 24 degrees Sagittarius, this is going to affect you very personally. You're going to experience a change within yourself, within your beliefs or your emotional attitude, your outlook, kind of your emotional baseline. That may change dramatically on Tuesday. That's just one example. Other than that, we do have one aspect today. So Mars will be squaring Neptune. Mars will reach 25 degrees Gemini. I can't believe Mars is still in Gemini. It's been there since October 28th or 30th, I believe, of last year. Mars is still in Gemini. And now Mars reaches 25 degrees Gemini where it squares Neptune. This kind of picks up on something I was talking about earlier. So I was talking about how, we have all these Aries and Pisces planets, and mixing these energies, mixing fire with water creates steam. It's very confusing. It's very hot, and that's a metaphor, of course. Things are heating up for sure, but they're not clear. This aspect is sort of a similar energy. Mars is squaring Neptune, so Mars is showing how we take action, what we take action for, showing our ambitions. Those things are clashing with Neptune, which is sort of the collective subconscious, our deep psyche or subconscious spirit. Whenever you get Mars squaring Neptune like this, it can become it can create an environment very conducive for accidents to happen, especially physical accidents, because again, you're mixing the physical, let's go, let's do something, let's take action type of energy, with Neptune, which is confusing and kind of it clouds your vision. You're not thinking clearly, especially if you have planets right around 24 degrees of any of the mutable signs, because Mars will be completing a T-square with the third quarter moon. It's pretty close to exact also. Third quarter moon at 24 degrees Sagittarius. It's opposing Mars at 25 degrees Gemini. So basically a T-square between Mars, Neptune, and the Sun, and the Moon. So bringing in all these different mutable signs, lots of very scattered energy. We may be pulled many different directions, especially if you have any kind of mutable planets, especially around 24, 25 degrees of Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius. This will affect you personally. Your life is likely to change on this day. But also any of us just in general, we're going to feel scattered, pulled in different directions. It's like there's so many different things going on right around this time that it's not going to be possible or likely to be able to manage it all or make sense of it all. With mutable signs, you have to just go with the flow, because you're, on the one hand, yes, this is a time of learning and kind of expanding your psyche, but on the other hand, you can never hope to understand each and every little thing. There's just so much going on, it's not possible, and everything is constantly changing. This is going to be one of those times where that is especially true. Everything's kind of up in the air on Tuesday. Everything's changing. It can be very dramatic, but, again, mutable signs. Act like a mutable sign, be open-minded, go with the flow. Yes, we have to have boundaries, but we also have to be flexible enough to adapt in a constantly changing world. So that's going to be especially true on Tuesday. Wednesday, March 15th, there's definitely a big attitude change when Moon leaves Sagittarius and enters Capricorn. I think typically this is a bit of a downer, because Sagittarius energy is so fun and lively. It's like a celebration. And then switching from that to Capricorn, it's much more kind of miserly, more strict. Let's be responsible. Let's plan ahead. Definitely a much needed energy, but in terms of, fun, I think Moon traversing Capricorn is much less fun than Moon in Sagittarius. However, this week, it's a little bit different because we're coming off of that third quarter moon aspect. So there was this really intense burst of energy, especially because Mars was so directly involved. Tuesday was very intense, like we talked about. So Wednesday, when Moon leaves Sagittarius and enters Capricorn, things do die down a little bit. They settle down. Capricorn is a sign that blends with Pisces much easier than Sagittarius does. So Moon in Capricorn, although it's not yet aspecting Sun or Mercury, at least by sign, it's in a more kind of compatible place. Things can wind down a little bit coming off of that third quarter aspect. Moon also, it's interesting because Moon is in Capricorn, so Moon is ruled by Saturn, but Moon is also making a waning sextile to Saturn as well. So it's almost like on Tuesday where we really have to just, throw everything up in the air and just go with the flow. But the focus changes so dramatically by Wednesday. Wednesday, we really need to be responsible. Let's have some clarity here. Let's be black and white about things. And I think it's all about a balance. We still have a lot of energy and focus on Pisces. So basically the focus is on, let's be realistic. Let's be concrete. But also let's continue to be flexible enough to be adaptable as well. Let's plan with our minds and think linearly and logically, but also be open to our own intuition at the same time. If you can strike that kind of perfect balance between the, left and right hemispheres of your brain, like they say, that's gold. You can do anything. I think that's one of the ways we can interpret these placements here. That's one kind of outlook that I think might be beneficial. Really interesting week we have here. Thursday, March 16th, there is a triple conjunction that I was talking about in the intro. So Sun, you can see Sun, Neptune, and Mercury are all at 25 degrees Pisces. If we want to get technical, Sun and Mercury are not quite exact yet. They're both, or they're not quite exactly conjunct, is what I mean. They're both at 25 degrees Pisces, but we won't get that conjunction until Friday, technically. But they're all so close together, and triple conjunctions are very rare. So Sun, Neptune, and Mercury, all at 25 degrees Pisces. They're in the sign that Neptune kind of rules over, if you subscribe to modern astrology. So this is where I say this to me kind of screams peak Pisces energy, peak confusion, discombobulation. But also on the other hand, it's interesting how we with Pisces energies, they can be so confusing and disorienting, but also potentially enlightening as well. And although they might seem like opposites, you can have both at the same time. You can experience your truth, like they say, and experience something very viscerally true for you, but in a way it's subjective because you may not be able to prove it to anyone else. Or in other words, you may have personal proof of something to be true, but it may not be something you can show anyone else. Does that make sense? Like, I've had experiences like that where like psychic experiences in particular, where I know for a fact that what I experienced is true because I've gotten proof, but it's proof that's personal in nature. If you hadn't had those experiences, if you weren't there when it happened, you wouldn't be able to appreciate what I view as basically proof. Does that make sense? So I think we all have that in kind of different ways. But that's, anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but that's just a big part of this kind of Pisces Neptune type of energy. In a way, we're experiencing like ultimate truth, but on the other hand, especially in our day-to-day lives, it can be very confusing. We can't just sit back and like meditate or something or go on a retreat. Many of us live busy lives. We have to continue with work and other obligations, and so I think that's also where a lot of this dysfunction comes in with Pisces energies. It's a lot like retrograde. I think Pisces energy is a lot like when planets go retrograde. Ideally, we would just sit back, rest, relax, kind of ponder things, mull things over, but we just don't. Most of us don't have that luxury, and so it's confusing, dysfunctional, etc. But this is especially true, and let's break things down here. So let's just look at Sun Mercury conjunctions, not even taking into account Neptune yet. So whenever Mercury is conjunct the Sun, we can be prone to mental burnout because Mercury rules the mind. It's literally kind of blocked out. We can't even see it because it's so close to the Sun. So it's almost like there's too much mental energy. It's like we're kind of fried when that happens. Now, take into account the conjunction with Neptune and the fact that this is happening in Pisces. Mercury is already kind of debilitated, very kind of, I don't want to say weak necessarily, but it's very, it's not acting like its normal self. In other words, our mental energy, the way we think about things, the way we communicate, is a little bit off kilter. It's a little bit dysfunctional. It's a little bit unusual, or it's not the normal. It's not being done by the normal kind of way of doing things. So basically, you have all the ingredients for like a very kind of strange day for sure. I would say to be especially careful with anything that requires a lot of attention to detail. It's almost like we're all kind of drunk today, or a little bit half awake or something. So be extra careful, extra thorough, especially with anything requiring attention to detail. Words, communication, facts, information may be skewed today. Perceptions are muddled today. Really, I think this brings out, or what, in a way, any transit kind of brings out truths that are sort of always true. It's just that they're especially relevant today. So in this case, we always have different perceptions, and we're not entirely living in the same reality. We like to believe that we have objective truths, but really, what even is that? You know what I mean? In a way, these things are always true, but on Thursday, this is kind of shoved in your face in different ways for all of us, that there is no objective truth. What is objective is subjective, and what is subjective is objective. You can have subjective truth. I don't know. It's gonna be confusing and dysfunctional. Let's just leave it at that, because we actually have a lot of other aspects to talk about for Thursday too. Let's see where to start. Okay, let's talk about Venus. There's a lot of focus on Mercury. Mercury's traveling so fast it's initiating a lot of these aspects, but let's talk about Venus here. So Venus is at the very end of Aries. You can see here it's at 29 degrees Aries, right around noon Eastern Standard Time. And right before Venus enters Taurus, Venus will square Pluto, which is at 29 degrees Capricorn. Pluto's real close to entering Aquarius. It's actually going to do that next week. But Thursday, Venus square Pluto. It's really interesting whenever we have aspects at the last or first degrees of a sign, or of their respective signs. In this case, Venus at the last degree of Aries, Pluto at the last degree of Capricorn. So both of these planets symbolize that we are at the end of a chapter, or to be more thoroughly correct, we're at the end of two chapters that are kind of ending simultaneously, if that makes sense. Venus and Aries symbolize this period recently where we may have been desiring things that were more egocentric, more focused on ourselves. We may have been desiring individuality more so as a collective these last few weeks. And Pluto and Capricorn much more long term. Since 2008, Pluto's been exposing the corruption with governments, the economy, things of that nature. Now, these are very different themes, but they're kind of ending at almost the same time. And although there may be kind of some parallels in how both of these planets are preparing to leave their respective signs, these planets are clashing. Venus is squaring Pluto, so this symbolizes that there's this disconnect between the love, the pleasure, the abundance, which is focused on the self. It's kind of black and white. It's very simple. That is all clashing with Pluto and Capricorn, which is more on the side of the collective and the hierarchy, whoever's in charge, the authority. So anyway, this is basically the individual versus the authority. Individual pleasure and desire versus ultimate truth that comes with hierarchies and authority figures. Does that make sense? This could also represent, Venus rules our abundance and our economy to some extent. That's clashing with Pluto, which can represent the government, basically Pluto and Capricorn. So that could show a disconnect between what local and national governments are doing versus what the kind of global economy is doing. There can be some kind of disconnect there, some kind of accident, some kind of mismanagement, miscalculation done in that arena, in those arenas. This can also represent some kind of ripples with how we associate with pleasure and desire. A lot of this can have to do not only with money, but also with our interpersonal relationships. So, whenever you have Venus Pluto aspects, there can be a lot of jealousy, a lot of insecurity, because whenever we're talking about Venus likes to be stable. Venus likes to be in Taurus, where she's about to be, but she's not quite there yet. Noon Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. But yeah, Venus, our love, our pleasure, our desire, oftentimes our money and relationships, we like those things to be real stable, so we can really invest in them and really enjoy them in a long-term way. But when we don't have that, like for example, when Venus is in Aries or when Venus is squaring Pluto, we basically feel threatened. We feel like how we support ourselves and how we're enjoying our experience here is the very nature of that is threatened, because it may change, and change is scary. So that that can provoke feelings of jealousy or control, basically. It's just a reaction to try to hold on to something that we're afraid of losing, basically. Um, but all this is going to change very dramatically. So within the same day on Thursday, Venus does leave Aries and enters Taurus. I think we can be a lot more stable and grounded here. I do have to make a side note though. For the last year or two especially, there's been this kind of anomaly where, although Taurus is such a stable sign, probably the most stable sign, we have two very unstable factors in that sign, North Node and Uranus, which both really shake things up. So Venus has entered Taurus, late in the day, Thursday, Eastern Standard Time. So that shows that our desire and our pleasure, the money, the economy, relationships, all these things may be stabling a bit, but we are approaching some very profound change that's going to happen there in the near future. We're not there yet, but it's going to happen. So I know this is a little bit convoluted, but this is how I see it here. Okay, and I think we pretty much covered it. We do get this exact aspect between the Sun and Mars as well. So basically, Sun, Neptune, Mercury, all conjunct 25 degrees Pisces. They're all squaring Mars at 25 degrees Gemini. So now we're mixing in this Mars energy. Not only do we have this mental burnout, potential really strong intuition, creativity, but also madness, insanity. Now we're mixing in Mars energy, which is aggressive and impulsive and spontaneous. So this can really make you feel crazy, especially if you have planets around 25 degrees of any of the mutable signs, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius. This will push you to a breakthrough where you have to completely, experience this huge revolution kind of immediately. This, I would speculate, will happen naturally in the sense that it's not like something you have to go out and try to do. This is going to happen whether you like it or not. But that's why it's good to be aware of these things so you can have kind of a heads up. But for all of us in general too, the way we are associating with our mental energy, communication, information, I don't know. I was gonna say it's like it's in peril. I don't know if I even use that word really, but it's like on the one hand, I think we may be wary about coming across information that's completely untrue or misinformation, like they say. But on the other hand, we may come across information that's very interesting today as well. So it may be hard to tell. And I would go as far as to say, I would speculate we're not going to fully know the ramifications of what information we come across today until much later. We're not going to really understand how it fits in the bigger picture, the accuracy of it. We're not going to be able to analyze a lot of things truthfully. We're not going to be able to see a clear picture until much later. But there is something very interesting, potentially groundbreaking, but also potentially just destabilizing and crazy today, kind of all coming. Does that make sense? Just at the very least, I would say to just look out for this day because there may be accidents. You may have some very just off the wall experiences or conversations, just weird kind of incidents happening out of nowhere, things like that. Okay, finally getting to Friday, March 17th. This is St. Patrick's Day in the U.S. I don't know if it's celebrated outside the U.S., but Friday, March 17th, moon continues through Capricorn, and then it will enter Aquarius. You can see it's at 0 degrees Aquarius, 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time. So this does change the dynamic again. Okay, let's run through. We've got 3 aspects for today. So Venus sextiles Saturn, Venus at 1 degree Taurus sextiling Saturn at 1 degree Pisces. I think this is kind of beautiful. Sextiles are very harmonious, of course, and in this case we're mixing Venus, which is all about pleasure and enjoying ourselves, especially in Taurus. We're really wanting those like physical experiences. Let's kind of indulge in the senses. But there's this harmonious aspect with Saturn. So Saturn is in Pisces, so it's basically saying, let's indulge in the senses, let's have beautiful physical experiences, but in a way that also honors the subconscious, honors our intuition. And I think, of course, that's what the whole point should be about. Let's have really, truly good food or, comfortable experiences that open up our minds or open up our subconsciouses. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what that whole thing is supposed to be about anyway. Otherwise, if it's purely just indulging in the senses and it's just kind of animalistic, then it's just hedonistic. It's a completely different level than opening yourself up to something much higher. So I think that's what Saturn in Pisces is kind of telling us with this aspect in a way. Another way of putting it is, we're wanting to enjoy ourselves in the physical world, but in a sustainable way. That's the beauty you get with especially harmonious aspects between Venus and Saturn. Let's enjoy ourselves in the moment, but also in a way that's sustainable, that's in our best, let's enjoy ourselves in a way that's in the interest of sustaining this enjoyment, true pleasure that lasts a lifetime. Okay, other than that, we do get that exact conjunction between Sun and Mercury at 26 degrees Pisces. So again, mental burnout. I would say to really just take it slow with anything that requires attention to detail or communication. That continues into Friday. And yeah, this is just that much wackier because of all this Pisces energy. And you can look to Pisces for, I don't know if advice would be the right word, or for an example of how to use this energy. I think Pisces people are okay with the world not making sense. They accept that. And I think for a lot of us on the outside, myself included, that can look crazy. How can you just enjoy something without really understanding it? But I think Pisces shows us, what does that even mean, understanding it? Just because you feel like you understand it, you never truly know everything. So how can you know anything? I don't know. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because I think that, even just talking about Pisces, I think becomes very, it's a rabbit hole. It gets just kind of convoluted and, so that's the whole point, is just to let it be. You know what I mean? Like Pisces in its very nature is almost not meant to be analyzed. It's something that kind of defies analysis, I guess you could say. But even just me, struggling through this analysis of this concept, I think is a good example of what we would experience on Friday with Sun conjunct Mercury in Pisces. The more you participate in analysis, very intellectual activities, information, attention, things that require attention to detail, it's just going to burn you out. It's not going to go as you expected necessarily. Or any kind of planning, very strict kind of thorough planning, it's just not going to work out. You got to be loose. You got to just roll with it. Things aren't going to make sense. Just go with it. You know what I mean? And if you do need to do things that, are informational or analytical or detailed, just be thorough, take breaks, that kind of thing. Okay, and then also we get that exact square between Mercury and Mars. So in addition to all this craziness, I know I'm giving you a lot right now, so I'm sorry. But Mercury square Mars, the way people, the way we're communicating, the way information comes across may be very kind of blunt, in your face. But on the other hand, it may be very ethereal, very convoluted as well. We're mixing Pisces with Mars and Gemini, with this kind of blunt, harsh, square aspect. So I wish I could give it to you in a better way, but that's just really how I see it. There are blunt, kind of dramatic changes happening right now. There are a lot of accidents. There's a lot going on. Pisces in itself would be, I think, much more tranquil, much more sleepy, soft. Let's just kind of chill out and be, hippies. But when you mix in these Aries planets and then Mars and Gemini making these squares, it gets a lot more rowdy, very hectic, very chaotic, very crazy. There's this huge clash happening with these energies really all week, but this is relevant for Friday as well. Saturday, March 18th, moon continues through Aquarius. We're really winding down now, preparing for a new moon at this point. Moon is still visible, but it's a waning crescent. It's, becoming a sliver at this point. So we're kind of beginning to sort of wind down. Everything is still very much crazy and up in the air, though. But as far as the moon is concerned, things are leveling out, I guess you could say. Saturday, we do have Mercury sextiling Pluto. So yes, sextiles are harmonious aspects, but Pluto, I feel like even with harmonious aspects, Pluto is so dark and deep, and it brings up, I was going to say something I'm not allowed to say. I haven't decided whether I want to cuss on this channel or not, but it brings up, insecurities, fears. It brings up things that many of us would feel more comfortable keeping, pushing back down and sweeping under the rug. Does that make sense? It'll bring out your dirty laundry, so to speak. So Mercury sextile Pluto, we're thinking, communicating about really deep issues today. Yes, that can be excellent. It can be necessary. I think it can be good, but it can also be challenging and uncomfortable. Mercury in Pisces, it's still in Pisces, so it's showing that we're still thinking outside the box. We're still open. We're still experiencing things maybe in a very subjective, kind of personal sort of way, but we're also coming across issues that have to do with the hierarchy, with, I don't know, whatever your hierarchy is. As a collective, it could be, the global governments, rules, regulations, the economy, but it's going to look different for each individual when we look at, our personal lives. What is the structure for you? What is your foundation? What are your obligations? Because whatever that is, or whatever hierarchies you're a part of, whether that be, at work or with your family or household, whatever the structure is for you, the structure of your world, that's where you may come across unsettling information. This may be information you did not ask for. This may be information that kind of shakes your reality a little bit. This is just a sextile with Mercury. It's nothing life-changing unless you have planets at 29 degrees Pisces or Capricorn. But still, I think this is enough that it can be kind of deep and dark and can change things a little bit. Otherwise, for a Saturday, I think this may sound a little bit unprofessional, but just looking at the chart, it just looks weird to me. It looks like a weird day, especially if you're going out on any kind of journey or something that requires a lot of planning. I would say expect the unexpected. It's probably not going to go how you planned it. Honestly, I would say to lay low, maybe not do a whole bunch today. I think the main exception would be if you're born, let's say you were born with a chart looking like this. Let's say you have a lot of Pisces and Aries planets in your chart. You're used to this kind of energy. You probably are a master of this, like what I would say is a really chaotic energy. So in that case, knock yourself out. Go, do whatever you want. Roam around. You'll be fine. But for most of us, this looks like insanity to me. So I would say if you're on the fence about, what you want to do for the weekend, I would say maybe just take it easy. Focus on yourself. Lay low. That would be my advice, but that's just me. I don't know. Sunday, March 19th, moon enters Pisces, immediately conjoining Saturn. And like I said, I think this is the first time all week that we've had moon in a sign that was remotely compatible for it, or, moon is finally in an environment that's kind of conducive to it. I love moon in Pisces. I think it's an objectively decent energy in the sense that moon represents emotion, intuition, spirituality. Being in Pisces represents many of those things as well. Moon is generally at home in the water element too. In this case, we're gearing up for this new moon, which will actually happen at the very beginning of Aries. But right now, Sun is still in Pisces, Moon is in Pisces, Neptune's in Pisces, Saturn's in Pisces, so lots of Pisces energy still. But Mercury has now left Pisces and entered Aries. So this is a huge change, especially in our day-to-day, you know, not necessarily like a month to month or longer than that type of focus, but on our day-to-day experience, this does change things dramatically. I think this is when we begin to wake up and smell the coffee. Like literally, we're almost like smelling coffee. You know, we're waking up, emerging from this subconscious dream state that we didn't even know we were in. That's the whole point. Where the fog is lifting, and we didn't even realize there was a fog. That's how confusing it was. It's almost like for the past 2 weeks, do you ever have a dream where in the dream you like wake up and then carry out your regular life or something? So it really seems real, but then you wake up and realize that was all actually a dream and now you're awake for real, like an inception of sorts. I feel like that's what this is, kind of like we thought we were awake, but now we finally really wake up for real. And this is where everything's going to kind of click a little bit. We're going to be able to make sense of things because Mercury's now in Aries, so the rules of the game have changed a little bit. The laws of physics are now very much back in place. We're not in the fourth dimension anymore, we're back in 3D on Earth. And things are more black and white when we have planets in Aries. Things are more simplified, and because things are simple, that allows us to be confident and outgoing and decisive and to take action. All these things that we do when planets are in Aries. What else? Mercury, I say, is in joy in Aries. This is the most fun sign for Mercury to be in because, again, like I described in the intro, Mercury represents the mental energy, and when Mercury's in Aries, you know, we can get a lot done. Lots is happening. There's lots to, you know, kind of feast the senses on, you know, or feast the mind on. A lot of stimuli. So again, I think that's good news. Maybe that's subjective, but even on a kind of objective level, Mercury is now not in detriment and fall like it was for about 2.5 weeks. Now it's in Aries where it's in joy. So we can, you know, especially if you know, like I said, most of us are working, we're, you know, living busy lives. So all these things that require productivity, you know, attention to detail, planning, this is good news for all of that type of normal life, everyday human type stuff, if that makes sense. It's really great to kind of sit back and dream and contemplate and, you know, expose ourselves to weird information like Mercury and Pisces was conducive to. But the reality is, you know, many of us, we just don't have time to always be doing that. We need to be productive. We have things to do. Does that make sense? I know that's kind of weird coming from an astrologer, but that's what I that's my opinion. Okay, yeah, I covered moon changing signs, Mercury changing signs, and that's what I have for you for this week. Only one day later, on Monday, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the sun will leave Pisces and join Mercury in Aries as well. So we're very much in the process of going from Pisces to Aries. So this is exciting. We've got the spring equinox next week. As if that wasn't enough, you know, really starting things, initiating things with spring and Aries and all that. As if all that wasn't enough, we have Mars entering Cancer, where it will be in fall, finally leaving Gemini. And the biggest news is Pluto's changing signs as well next week. So for the first time since 2008, back in the, you know, same year that Obama got into office in the United States, same year that the stock market crashed. I think it was the same month actually, but it's been so long, it's almost, you know, history at this point, but it is history, I guess. But Pluto's been in Capricorn that long, so it's finally going to enter Aquarius. It's not completely done in Capricorn yet. It will re-enter Capricorn, but we're going to get a few months of Pluto in Aquarius. So that's really going to show us a sneak peek at what will eventually become the age of Aquarius. It's not there yet, but we are getting to some very interesting a very interesting turn of events, I believe. We're starting a 2-year phase of Saturn in Pisces and Pluto in Aquarius, where I call it the global meltdown that's about to happen. I'm sorry. It's very late. I'm tired. I'm going to wrap this up, but that's what I have for you this week. So I hope this helps you, or at the very least was amusing. Hit me up if you need a reading. Of course, I'm always there to do that. Actually, I've been very busy lately, so I appreciate all of your patience with everything. But yeah, lots to talk about next week. So hang in there. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care.